We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by PrizePicks Week 8. It's the big show. How's everyone doing? We're starting a little bit later than normal. Sorry that I didn't get, I guess, a good heads up out there outside of Twitter and a couple of things that we talked about on the videos earlier this week, but hope everyone is doing well. Fresh off one of my best friends' bachelor party weekend, which was a lot of fun. Got to go up north, so woke up early after a long night. Drove, I think it was like 3 hours back home, just in time to get a show in before kickoff. So hope everyone is doing really well. The good news is I think that this slate is one of the ones that'll be really fun to talk through. So I wanted to make sure that we at least got a show for you guys this week. How's everyone doing in the chat? I know we had some people in here that probably didn't get the memo, so sorry about that if you were here earlier. Joey Donnelly in here. What's up, my man? Wayne Casey. Casey Bone. What's up, guys? Mikey Boy's in here. Secure the bag. Yeah, no coffee for me this morning. Sticking to water. Gonna be sticking to water today. Ian Warner's in here. Joe Milk's in here. What's up, guys? What's up? We're gonna build some lineups at the end. Yes, we are. We are back. Torrential rain. Oh yeah, we'll talk weather. We will talk weather. What's up, Doug D? How's it going? Casey Bone. Who else we got in here? Who else we got? Nick's in here. What's up, Nick? A Web. How we doing? How we doing? Love the chalk donkey emojis still. I think those are still some of my favorite ones that we have. Have I heard the news on Mahomes? I have not. That was one of the first things that I was going to ask you guys about. Did I miss anything over the last like 2 or so hours in the car? Did anything crazy happen today? Let's see what we got here on the news side of things first. And then we can jump into some polls, do our usual routine. We'll keep it going. Weather took less than a minute. Yeah. All right, what do we got? Zay Jones, active. Curtis Samuel, active. Patrick Mahomes' illness will play in Week 8 against the Broncos, despite being a late addition to the injury report. Okay, fair enough. That was 3 minutes ago. Breaking news. This will be a little bit different. We got a lot more things to work through a little bit quicker since we have less than an hour and a half until lock right now. So we'll see if we can get through it. Jalen Ramsey active. Raheem Mostert active. Did I miss anything crazy? So everyone was panicking about the Mahomes stuff. Weather talk under 1 minute. Yeah, I gotta remember that's something you guys are all fucking monitoring at this point, right? Is the weather over under 20 minutes into the show? We didn't even make it into 1 minute of the show today. Okay, fine. We'll get there. We might as well talk about. Well, let's start with our normal routine. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here. Let's start with the poll like we always do. Who will be the highest owned player today? Fun week 8 slate. We got Trey McBride, Breece Hall, Alvin Kamara, Zay Flowers, Isaiah Pacheco, or other. If you're here for the first time, normally we're live every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time. Hit that subscribe button so that you can take advantage of the polls. In order to place your vote, ! Vote space the number in chat. Who will be the highest owned player today? Let's get our feet set with that as I'm looking through some weather stuff for you guys. What are we thinking? Highest owned player today. The value is not great out there on this slate. So we are 3 minutes into the show, 5 minutes into the show. Not too worried about the weather, guys. I think the main thing, if we're talking about like KC Denver, I think the main thing to worry about here, or typically with cold weather, it's not necessarily the snow. It's like the weather that gets like under 15 degrees. There's actually data that will show that the scoring goes down a little bit in those situations. We know about wind. Yeah, there's a little bit of snow, but I don't think it's going to be a big issue. I bet they'll be able to clear it off. Outside of that, not too concerned. Breece Hall leading the way so far in our poll for the highest owned player in Week 8. I think you guys are probably right. It's really difficult to build lineups without probably getting in at least one of Breece Hall or Isaiah Pacheco at the running back side of things, just because it's there's not a lot of great wide receiver value. We're going to flip things a little bit from what we normally do with these polls, though. So I'm going to close this one out. I think I agree with you guys that Breece Hall will be the top. Trey McBride probably close behind. Again, with the restrictions we have with a really tight salary structure on DraftKings specifically. This is, I think, what might end up kind of changing the slate completely is going to be this poll right here. So who is our top wide receiver play today? Like, is there a wide receiver that we're like absolutely prioritizing on the high end of things? Like, have you built lineups getting to Tyreek Hill? Have you built lineups trying to prioritize getting in either Chase or AJ Brown? Are you trying to go off the board with Cooper Kupp this week? What do you guys think of this side of it? I think this is like one of the more interesting things, because if you do find a way to kind of flip the build or play like more of a stars and scrub type of lineup, which I don't think is going to be as popular today because the value outside of McBride just doesn't look very good. It's difficult to get to these guys, and they aren't projecting as well. But if you are going to prioritize one of these 4 elite wide receivers, price considered, who is it? Hill versus Patriots D and wind risky. Honestly, so the wind looks like it's at 10 to 15 miles per hour. I'm not too concerned with the wind or the weather in that game. I think the bigger concern for someone with like Tyreek is if he's even just a little bit banged up. We get the upside from Tyreek from just having like those massive big plays, right? For the most part. If he's a little bit limited and can't get up to top speed, that's, I think, what limits the upside. Obviously, second division game. There's a million things you can poke holes in probably for Tyreek at this salary, but that's the one that stands out to me more than the win, my man. Hope that helps. We'll talk a little bit more about these guys. The Puka recency bias is nuts. Yeah, it's kind of crazy to see. Yeah, not one person so far. We got almost 300 people here. Not one person has voted for Cooper Kupp yet. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so let's go back to like our normal kind of rotation here. I guess wanted to really see the difference, honestly, between Tyreek and AJ Brown specifically. So I think I'm with you guys. I think AJ Brown is going to be one of the ones that a lot of people talk themselves into today, for good reason, right? So here's the thing about this slate in particular. I don't know if there's a lot of quarterbacks I like in general, but this is the list I came up with. Curious your guys' thoughts. Top quarterback play, price considered. This is a sub-only vote. We got Brock Purdy, fresh off the concussion protocol. Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, Patrick Mahomes, or other. Where are we at the quarterback position today? It has felt like over the last few weeks that we just had like a ton of really good plays at quarterback at like different salary levels. This week, it seems pretty clear to me, but I'm curious if you guys agree. Bengals will play from behind. I like Chase. Yeah, I'm definitely warming up to that game for sure. I think Cincy San Francisco is probably going to be one of the lineups we built today. I want to fly a little bit quicker through some of the positional stuff today since we have a little bit less time and obviously less time before lock, and try and get at least a couple lineups built here at the end. Lamar Jackson leading the way with the poll so far. Yes, I should probably show you guys right now exactly what I'm talking about here. I did take a Lamar over earlier in the week, so if you haven't checked out the prop drop newsletter, there's a link in the description for that. All the prize picks that are coming out throughout the entire week, player props, all that stuff get dropped to an email newsletter. They get posted on Twitter a little bit later. Typically, those lines are moving a little bit. I wonder what the Lamar line is at now. Just curious. Let's see. So the Lamar rushing line today. Just realized you guys can't see anything I'm doing. Lamar rushing is at 47.5. Okay. Let's see what we got here. What did we get it at? This is one of the first ones we took this week. So we got 43.5. So it's only at 47.5. Hasn't moved as much as I expected it to. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, if you guys haven't checked this out, I'll throw this on the screen in case I forget. But these went out on Friday morning. We are in a 12-3 run right now on the Prop Drop newsletter, our official plays. So we basically have a couple plays from each of the slates, and then we'll probably do a giveaway on Twitter as well. So make sure you guys get your notifications on over on Twitter so you can see when those drop. Early slate, we have a Chris Olave over 58.5 receiving yards. Jalen Hurts, 251. This is one of the unders that I went after. These quarterback passing yards ones sometimes get a little bit inflated on PrizePicks specifically. So if you guys remember, I think we took the Tua under last week, which ended up looking pretty good. So we have an under on both Jalen and Mahomes on the PrizePicks side. Doesn't mean I don't think they can have a great game. I'm just not fully convinced that either one of them will be pushed, obviously. And then that affects some of these passing yardage props to me. Obviously, love Zay Flowers. We were able to get him over 54.5 receiving yards on PrizePicks earlier this week. Let's see what that one is at. 58.5. So we did pretty well on that one as well. And then Justin Herbert for Sunday Night Football, we got him more than 9.5 rushing yards. I might do another Sunday Night Football prop drop later today when I have a little bit more time to dig in. But best place to get access to this is just the first link in the description and then Twitter. So, all right. What else? Well, how's this poll looking so far? Lamar leading the way. Not shocking. Where are we at on Lamar versus Jalen today? What do you guys think? Whatever Lamar's rushing line is, I'm taking the over. Yeah, that's kind of where I was at too. I just think that it started even like a little bit lower than it should have this week for sure. He's looked really good. Lamar, honestly, like, looks just as good as he did when he won the MVP, right? So it's nice to see him blow up last week, jumping back on that train this week for sure in DFS at 8,100 on DK versus an 8,200 Jalen Hurts. The touchdown equity that you get from Jalen Hurts, just him being so active in any time their team is scoring, is obviously a huge plus. If I had to choose between one of these guys, it's really, really close. It's a great matchup, obviously, for Jalen against Washington. I think I'm going to be on the Lamar side today if I had to choose one, but I do think that it is really close. Blaine's with me in the chat. He says Lamar over Hurts. Yeah, I kind of agree. So I think the tougher decision is who to pay down for this week. So Brock Purdy, obviously we didn't get the Sam Darnold stuff. Would have been nice to kind of open up the slate a little bit with that. If we're paying all the way down or paying down a little bit, I don't mind Dak at 6,100. And he's not someone that I don't think I've played like this entire year. And I think you can play him with Pollard and feel pretty good about that situation. I mean, at home, really good spot for them. I just think Dak is just the one that looks really underpriced to me at the quarterback position. Purdy at 5,600 if you need a little bit more salary, I do think is totally fine. Joey B is the pay down on FanDuel. Yeah, tougher to get to him, I think, from a projection standpoint on DraftKings, but I agree on FanDuel. Looks a little bit stronger. He's going to be higher owned over there as well. Okay, let's keep pushing through the positions, and we can talk a little bit more about quarterback as we're building some teams and figuring out our stacks. This is an interesting week at running back, so I'm curious you guys' thoughts on this one. Top running back play, price considered. This is a sub-only vote. Alvin Kamara, Breece Hall, Tony Pollard. Gosh, that guy is due for one, don't you think? Isaiah Pacheco, Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, or other. What do we think? What do we think here about top running back play today on DraftKings, price considered? Swaggy says Lamar is the best play on the slate today. I might be with you on that. Michael Thomas has a bug putting on Shaheed to save some salary. Decent spot to go to Shaheed in general for some upside, probably. In the dome. What are we thinking at running back? Running back is another one that feels kind of clear this week, right? We kind of know that our lineups are probably going to start around very specific buckets of salary at the running back position today. And it's kind of leading towards like one of these weeks overall where you end up like with a ton of really balanced builds. Is anyone else like kind of experiencing that so far in building teams? The really balanced builds are really what I think a lot of people are going to gravitate towards today for sure. So I'm like trying to figure out if there's anything I really like on the cheaper side of things and build a couple teams that are a little bit more stars and scrubs, which I think will be actually pretty unique today, which is not typical. Yep, Minhall agrees. A lot of balanced stuff. Chris is, yep, okay, cool. So we're on the same page with that. That's good. It's nice to, in some ways, do this stream a little bit later, just because I'm a little bit further along in roster construction, even though I had a little bit of a drive this morning. The JT love is definitely real in the chat right now. So many running back options today. I don't know if I'd agree with that. I feel like there's a handful of them that are especially strong. So we know that Zach Moss is going to be active today, right? So I still think that Jonathan Taylor is still a really strong play overall. And if Zach Moss is going to be limited by that foot, I think that it could look really, really good when all is said and done. So the JT stuff I definitely like. I think I prefer Pollard at 7,500, kind of in that range. Not a lot of Pollard love in the chat so far, which is interesting to me. Because I considered making Pollard like one of my top priorities today. It's easier to tell yourself probably that story with Kamara, just because of the pass catching, obviously, which has been completely insane. But I do think this is a really, really strong spot for Pollard. Breece Hall, obviously, we get the salary discount. He's always got that really big upside, break a big play, all those things, right? But Pollard in general on DraftKings, it just seems like at some point the volume is going to hit this point where he's going to have a massive, massive game. He has not been getting kind of in the end zone as much as we would like, of course, but the volume in the high value areas of the field are really what we need to focus on with Pollard, I think. So to show you guys kind of what I'm talking about here, at fantasylife.com, they have a red zone rushing tool. It's one of the ones that I use pretty consistently every week, along with their air yards tool, which I can get to in a second. But just looking at some of the stuff in the red zone for Tony Pollard, it just looks so strong, right? 17 rush attempts inside the 10, leads the league. David Montgomery close behind with 16. Inside the 5, a little bit lower down that list, but still think that Tony Pollard is a really strong bet to get a touchdown today. We'll get to some of the wide receiver stuff in a second, but while we're here, this air yards tool, if you want to just focus on one number at the wide receiver position, weighted opportunity rating is typically where I'm going to go. So it's a combination of market share of air yards and target share. So it gives us kind of a really good metric just to really give us volume, but also high value targets down the field and who's really dominating in that way. Breece Hall, I guess we didn't talk to him about him a ton. Just he's too cheap, right? He's just way too cheap. So starting with that, I mean, obviously against this Giants defense that can give up big plays, right? We talked about that earlier in the week in the matchup video with Reeves. That it's just a really good spot for him to break off a few big runs and could hit. If he hits one or two of those, you're looking pretty good from a salary perspective. Let's keep this moving because I want to build some teams. So I think we're probably mostly on the same page at running back. It sounds like I might like Pollard a little bit more than chat, which I think is okay. We already did our top elite wide receiver play. So this is kind of where the week is going to be won and lost, I think. So these non-elite wide receivers this week, the mid-range wide receivers. What's our preference here? Obviously, Zay Flowers is going to be the chalk. But price considered, who's our top play? Or who is our biggest priority in this mid-range of wide receiver? We got Zay Flowers, Adam Thielen, Tank Dell, Josh Downs, Terry McLaurin, Brandon Ayuk, or other. This is probably the most important poll of the entire week. So if you've been just kind of lurking in chat, This is the one that I would really appreciate some feedback on if you guys want to go ahead and vote. This is the one we got to get right, I think. There's some decent pivots for Hall from huge GPPs. I agree. Yeah, so like there's a couple guys on the cheaper side of things that you probably could consider. From like a GPP perspective, you could go probably as gross as you want to, but you could probably go to someone like Kareem Hunt if you really wanted to do that. I think a lot of people are probably going to be afraid of Bijan Robinson, but I really like him in GPPs today if you're trying to pivot off of some guys in that range. I think that makes a ton of sense. Travis Etienne is the one that I think probably just gets completely ignored at 7,200 because he doesn't project quite as well as Pollard and Kamara. But man, Etienne has been so good, and it's a great spot against Pittsburgh. We got some Olave love in the chat. I like that because we did take an over on PrizePicks for Olave. We got over 58.5 receiving yards for Olave earlier this week. So feel pretty good about that one too. Woods is drawing around 9 targets a game. Those targets have to go somewhere. Yeah, the Houston stuff looks really good. Looks really good. I think you could probably even make a really strong argument for either of those guys, right? On the Houston side of things. So I built some teams with Nico Collins. He's another guy that we talked about in the matchups video with Reeves pretty extensively that I really like. Tank Dell at 4,900. You save 600. Both of those guys really high ceilings in the spot against Carolina. And there's a little bit of like some narrative there too, right? CJ Stroud gets passed on at the 101. That's one of the games I'm looking forward to watching today, believe it or not. ETN and JT, my highest owned running backs. Yeah, I think the JT stuff is really strong. So this poll, we got 46 votes. Let's try and get a decent amount of volume here on this poll. Zay Flowers leading the way. Josh Downs. Yeah, really strong spot for Downs. Can't even talk. Downs. If Pittman ends up getting locked up a little bit, we got some of those layup targets in the middle of the field, playing the slot. Minshew clearly loves them. The Josh Downs stuff is really strong today too. I agree. What to do with Zay Flowers in tournaments, though, is something I'm struggling with a little bit. I think he's probably that. I mean, I mentioned how much I like Lamar. He's definitely the guy that's a little bit easier to probably click than Andrews from a roster construction standpoint. And it's just a really strong spot against the Cardinals. I feel like we talk about this every week, just the team that's playing against the Cardinals, but just another really up-tempo spot here for Lamar. Zay Flowers definitely separating. 5,600, just way, way, way too cheap. Addison for your Vikings. Yeah, I haven't really messed around with a ton of Vikings teams or Vikings builds so far this morning. I don't hate it, though. So we could talk through some pivots here for a second. So like some of the top like leverage guys that I like today. I think that if you wanted to go to even like a Drake London at 5,100, I think he's someone interesting against Tennessee. Obviously a nice pass funnel there, which is interesting. We mentioned the Houston guys. I think both of those guys are extremely strong. I think those are the two that those are the ones that I probably be the most focused on in this mid-range, kind of making some pivots. Running back, the pivots are a little bit grosser. I think like if you wanted to go down to something like Kareem Hunt at 5,200, it's probably fine. But Bijan is the one that I think really stands out as like just not enough ownership typically for this week at least. Not as interested in Demercado at 4,800. I know there's some people that were talking about him a little bit. That one's not as interesting to me. The Houston running backs, pick your poison. That's probably one that probably a direction I won't go this week. But if you wanted to take a flyer on one of those guys, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Oh yeah, and DeAndre Swift at 6,300. I think he gets a little bit overlooked today. The pivoting I'm probably doing is going to be probably to go a little bit cheaper at running back just to get up at wide receiver a little bit to some of these different tiers that are a little bit tougher to get to in rosters where you don't have some sort of salary saving element outside of Breece Hall. Higgins is interesting. Yeah, I would imagine Higgins coming out of the bye is totally healthy as well. Yeah. Who do you like on defense outside of Atlanta D? Yeah, Atlanta's going to be the chalk. I think that Seahawks, Jaguars were the other two that I was looking at. Both of those still look pretty good. Okay, so we got 48 votes on this. Zay Flowers leading the way, and then Josh Downs. I could live with that. I think that's pretty strong. This is the one that I think we can spend the least amount of time on, and then we'll get into building some lineups. Top tight end play today. Trey McBride, Jake Ferguson, Travis Kelce, TJ Hawkinson, or other. What are we doing at tight end today, friends? Are we paying all the way down? Is this the Trey McBride week where everyone just jams him in at 2,800? Running a few more routes last week, obviously, with Zach Ertz out. The target share stuff looks pretty good. We've been down this road before with Trey McBride. Tight ends in general. What do we think? Price considered, what are we doing? Are we going back to Kelce after that explosion? Can we get up to Kelce realistically in rosters? Those are the questions that I'm asking myself right now. Pat Mahomes has the flu today for anyone who hasn't heard. Yes, that does not sound great for the Travis Kelce stuff. The amount of ads on DraftKings is actually insane. I was teeing up just a screen here for some rosters to build with you guys, and I'm just getting like a bunch of rings over here. Like, what do they think I need here? They think I need to buy a second engagement ring, a second wedding ring? I don't need any rings. Why am I getting ads for rings on my screen? On DraftKings. Get this out of here. Kelce definitely has to be on a Stars and Scrubs team. Yeah, we could build one of those. We'll see. I'll leave it up to you guys in a sec. We're really kind of flat at tight end, but I don't know if it's the most interesting conversation to have today. So let's close this out and get to my favorite poll of the entire week. Favorite game stack. We'll build a squad. What do you guys want to build here? We got Cincy at San Fran, New England at Miami, LA at Dallas, KC at Denver, Jacksonville at Pittsburgh, Houston at Carolina, Philly at Washington. What are we thinking here? Kind of as a recap for anyone that's just popping in, normally we're live every Sunday at 9 a.m. So if you're here for the first time, hit that subscribe button. Join us on Sundays. Started a little bit later today. Had a bachelor party, so drove back from that this morning in order to get you guys something here before lock. But from quarterback perspective, I do prefer Lamar over Jalen on the top end. And I think that the Brock Purdy versus Dak Prescott stuff is close. I think if he needed the savings to go down to Brock Purdy, I think that's totally fine. Running back, we know that Breece Hall is severely underpriced, and then it's probably a coin flip between Kamara and Pollard, though it seems like most people are skewing towards the Kamara stuff, which I think is probably fine. It seems like Pollard's a little bit undervalued right now from an ownership perspective. Pacheco is right there, a guy we didn't talk about. I think he's really strong as well at that price point if you need to pay down from some of these guys. And then definitely been experimenting with some Christian McCaffrey builds. We didn't talk about him, but I think the Stars and the Scrubs is going to be a little bit more unique than normal this week. Wide receiver, again, if you're trying to get up to someone like Jamar Chase or A.J. Brown, those are probably the two targets that I'd be after at the top end of wide receiver. Zay Flowers is the chalk, but he's going to be the chalk for the reason. He's probably one of the more underpriced plays. I mentioned how much I like Lamar, so totally fine with the Flowers stuff in tournaments. If you're playing him, you got to get different elsewhere. Then it's kind of that tier of Thielen, Ayuk. Talked about Josh Downs. I think I'd probably prefer Josh Downs over those two other guys price considered. I think that he looks really good. And then the Houston guys. Tight end, I'm probably fine paying down with Trey McBride. It's just so necessary at 2,800 in order to get some of the rosters that you want. So we want to build here. Houston, Carolina leading the way so far. We could build a Stroud team. Not scared to do that. That could work. All right, well, let's start there. Let's close this one out. Bring you guys over to DraftKings with all my ads. So, do we want to do a double here? What are you guys thinking with this one? We built a team with Stroud early in the week, I believe, with Reeves, which was a pretty fun build. So, I think we can get Tank Dell in there. I think we can go Nico. We just go double here. Is there anything that we want to prioritize on the Carolina side? Do we want to just get Thielen on the other side of this team? Tank, Nico, Thielen? Yeah, I think that's probably pretty strong. Let's start with that. We can throw kind of our placeholder defense in there if we want to. I think the Falcons, we can just leave them in for now and maybe make some adjustments at the end for that. If we throw in McBride to this team, we have 7K the rest of the way for 3 different slots. So of these chalky running backs, of these really strong running back plays, who do we want to make sure we get in there? I feel like I've been talking about Pollard a lot, so I'll get Pollard in there. 67.50 the rest of the way. If we went Pollard and Kamara, what does that leave us with? Is my question. 6,200. So that can get us Jonathan Taylor. That can get us Pacheco. Breece Hall. That's still a really nice range. But this build, I guess, that's a question I have for you guys. Is this double going to be like relatively popular in tournaments, or is this still a little bit under the radar? It's hard for me to gauge this one specifically for some reason. What do you guys think? Because if we're at 6,200, I'm more just debating how different we need to get with this last piece. Won't be popular. Okay. So at 6,200, this could be, we could just move defense around and get to like a DeAndre Swift team, or we just kind of go a little bit chalkier with something like Pacheco. We could go Bijan on this team, which I don't hate. That gives us a little bit more differentiation as well. I don't want to play like all 3 of the running backs or 3 of the top 5. So maybe this is a Bijan team. What do you guys think about that? Something like this with Falcons D. This one makes a lot of sense to me. We could move around defense. We could adjust some of the Pollard Kamara stuff. We could probably make CMC work on this team. Does CMC Breece work on this? Miss it by 100, so you could move around defense if you really wanted to and play a CMC Breece. I think that's probably okay too. So there's some options here. There's some options with this one. Okay. Let's close this poll out. And I will remove them from the Houston, Carolina. Boom. If we weren't playing a Houston stack, what's another game stack that you guys really like today that you want to build? I think Bijan is sharp, especially after last week's fiasco. Me too. I like the Bijan stuff. Yeah. Especially with like him, like his price range is like there's so much chalk around him. The ceiling's still definitely there. Spam in the chat is just so tilting. What do you guys want here on the next team that we're building? Probably go a little bit shorter today, like I mentioned, since we're starting late. What are we thinking? What are we thinking? We got some Cincy, San Francisco love. We got some Philly, Washington love. I think both of those would be fun. DraftKings is moving really slow, just in general, that site for me today. We're pretty neck and neck here. So we have almost 450 people in here. Only 18 people care what lineup we build next, apparently. Let's get a few more votes in here before we start this build. What we thinking? What we thinking? All right, looks like we might be able to do a Burrow build here. So let's close this out, and we'll just do both of these. How's that? So we'll do a Cincy at San Fran, and we'll do a Philly at Washington, and then I'll let you guys get back to building your teams. All right, so we got a Burrow team. So then the Burrow decision is, do we want to double with T, or do we want to alpha stack it with just Chase? What do you guys think? T. Higgins is 5,900. What are you guys thinking in the chat? Do we double it, or do we go alpha? Always double stack. Yeah, I think T at 5,900 is a no-brainer for this team. Let's throw in Falcons and Trey McBride as our placeholders, just to give us an idea of where we're at with this team. So I think it'd be really difficult to play CMC on this team with Chase, but we could probably just do an Ayuk bring back if we wanted to. So this is probably a Brees team, right? 5,900 for him, 5,700 the rest of the way for a running back and a flex. Is there any mini stacks that we really like on the cheaper side of things? Kittle bring back. The Kittle stuff is really hard to build today. I don't know if we can do the Kittle stuff on this team. We would probably have to definitely get rid of Ayuk, obviously. We could try it. Do you guys want to try and do a Kittle? We got a lot of those in the chat. I very rarely play Kittle, honestly. Move Chase to the flex. Yeah, good call. The running back and wide receiver, 5,700 left. If we played like something really gross, but humor me, that gets us to 6,200 wide receiver. And we could get a Calvin Ridley, which I think is really interesting, actually. Speaking of like guys that no one wants to play, right? How do you guys feel about Calvin Ridley at 5,800? I kind of like it, actually, and it scares me. The spam today? What the heck is going on? Shaheed and Downs mini. That's interesting. We have a decent amount of people that want us to make a Kittle team work, though. So let's see what happens if we adjust this a little bit to Kittle. So we'll probably need something significantly cheaper at wide receiver than we were considering before. Downs is 4,800. If we got him in there, then that would leave us with 5,800 left. That gets us our Calvin Ridley as well. I think I might like the Kittle side of this better. Yep. Okay, let's go with that. I like it. I like it. Just play Pierce instead of Hunt. Could do that. Yeah, there's a couple different options on the running back side, on the cheaper gross running back side. Okay, so what do we say? We're going to do a Philly build next. Let's do it. 45 minutes until lock. So after this one, I'm probably going to go build a little bit more myself and figure out some final tweaks. All right, so let's get Hurts in there. Let's get AJ Brown in there. Do you guys like the McLaurin stuff on the other side? He seems like an easy bring back. Another guy in that 5,300 range that projects really well, but I think other people are going to go a different direction. The ownership still looks pretty good on him. And part of the reason I do these placeholders, guys, is like I would never recommend that you just like blindly play the same lineups that we're building. It's nice to have some of these placeholders in here, and kind of that's where you can maneuver some things around on your own. 5,700 the rest of the way if we started with this starting point. So yeah, the Hurts stuff definitely is it's expensive at 8,200, right? We don't have a Flowers team yet, which I think I'm okay with. We have a Pollard team. We have a Kamara team. Who else haven't we got in that we've been kind of talking a ton about? We don't have a Pacheco team yet. So if Mahomes is truly, I guess, battling through the flu, maybe Pacheco ends up looking even stronger against Denver. I don't know if we need to have anyone on the Denver side of the ball. I think I'm okay with that. Thoughts on pivoting to Gallup from Powell, who's going to be super chalky. Are people going to play Gallup today too? See, that's like the range I'm trying not to go down to, if I'm being honest. The Dobbs Addison mini stack. That's interesting. $5,600 the rest of the way. We don't have a Jonathan Taylor team yet. We don't have a Christian McCaffrey team. I don't think we can get McCaffrey on this build. If we went Taylor and Shaheed, so I know a couple people have been mentioning Shaheed, that leaves us with 6,600 in the flex, which is a nice range. Because that would still give us Thielen. We could add Michael Pittman to that if we really wanted to. We could also play Chris Olave. We could do like a nice little mini with Chris Olave, Jonathan Taylor, and Shaheed. What do you guys think about that? Kind of like the Kamara fade build. You know what I mean? So this team not having Kamara, but having the other pieces around it. Kind of talking myself into that a little bit, like that little mini stack. What do you guys think? Yeah, I think that's kind of a smart way to build around a non-Kamara team today. I like it. Okay, guys. Well, I know we went a little bit shorter today. If you guys haven't already, make sure you guys check out the Prop Drop newsletter. There's a link in the description for that. Probably get something out later today, maybe. Or I'll just stick with the few that I have so far for Sunday Night Football. There'll be one tomorrow as well for Monday Night Football. Make sure you guys check out PrizePicks, of course. Link in the description for that. Get your free $100 bet with code HOLKA. All the props, all the overs, all that good stuff. Again, sorry that we had to start a little bit at a different time today. Sometimes priorities for good buddies, bachelor parties, those side of things, we have to make adjustments. So sorry if you guys were here waiting earlier today. And run good this week. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk soon.